Okay, in this video module, what we're going to be discussing is CSG operations. Now, in the last video, we discussed how we could go in and manipulate the vertices and edges of our brushes. And that does give us a pretty good amount of control over the brush itself. But now, what if you want to do things like cut a hole out of a brush or take two brushes and merge them into one? Well, when we get into this, we start needing to take advantage of CSG operations. CSG stands for Computed Solid Geometry. Now, when we create a brush, we look at that brush as just a solid piece of geometry. So how can we get in there and do, I guess you could say, Boolean type operations with it? Is that fair, Logan?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, let's take a look at the three operations. We're going to look at subtract, merge, and hollow.
Okay, so the first one, subtract. The way this works is it takes one selected brush and cuts into any other brushes that it intersects. So let me set up a quick wall example so we can cut a chunk out of the wall. I'll draw out a kind of thin brush and then stretch that up to be the wall. So something like that. Then I'll create another brush that runs through it, like so.
Except maybe a little skinnier.
Scale it down so that it's more of a squarish looking. Yeah.
Actually, so it's easier for them to see. Let me see this real quick. I'm going to jump over here and maybe we can just make it a little bit wider, like such. And maybe, yeah, there we go. That'll make it a little easier to see.
So we've got one selected brush that goes through the other one, so it intersects it. And if we wanted to subtract out of this other brush, it's now as simple as hitting subtract. So subtract, and it doesn't immediately look like anything has happened, but that's just because it doesn't delete the brush that you were using for the subtract. If you move it out of the way now, we can see that we have more brushes. The way this worked, the way this, in this case, cutting a hole into another brush, if you remember, brushes cannot be concave. So what it had to do to accommodate this shape is split the one brush into four convex brushes that could fit together to build the shape. And we can take a look at that if we go and select each of the individual brushes that resulted from that CSG operation.
Plus, if we take a look down in our console as well, you can see subtracting done and created four fragments out of one brush. And that's what it did. We've got four new brushes now.
Okay, so that's a simple CSG subtract.
So here's a neat thing to do. How about this? Now, in an earlier video, we showed them how to use hollow to take a brush and hollow it out. And it gave us some problems, of course, because we had overlapping brushes. And in the last video, we took a look at doing that again, and by doing that, it allowed us to show you how we could manipulate the vertices and edges to kind of clean it up. But here's another way that you can quickly create a room, and this time, watch what's going to happen. Things are going to turn out a lot cleaner looking.
First, let me get that back, and then I'll delete, or hitting escape in the wrong view. Let me select everything and take these out so we can start over with a clean room. Then console can come back. There we go. Now, let's draw out a new cube room, something about, oh, like that should work. And then scale it up so that it's 128 units tall. So we have a room that we want to make into a playable area.
And we want to do this with the subtract CSG operation now.
Okay, so I'm going to need a smaller brush to put inside of this.
And there's no better way to do it than to duplicate this one brush.
By cloning it with the
Wow,
spacebar.
that was so fast, Logan. How did you do that?
Spacebar.
Spacebar. Very interesting.
Alright, so I'll simply drag some of these faces to put it inside the first brush, and same in the Z-axis view as well. So if we take a look from the side, we can see it is, in fact, inside that. By a unit, since we have the grid set to 8, that means we're going to have a wall thickness of 8 units. So we've got that set up. We should be able to simply do the subtract, and then immediately I'm just going to delete that brush out. We're done with it. So now, check it out. If we look down on our status bar, we have 6 brushes. Well, that pretty much constitutes the cube room, so let me actually move the camera inside, and sure enough, we have a cube room we can look around or exist in.
Very nice. Now, do we have any problems with the brushes that were created?
Nope, doesn't look that way. If we look in the top view, there are no overlapping brushes, and same in a front or side view. Everything is very cleanly divided up.
So I just wanted to point that out, that is indeed another technique for hollowing out an area, if you will, but at the same time getting a good result out of the brushes that are created. Okay, very cool. So that's subtract. Now let's take a look at merge. And with looking at the merge CSG operation, this also allows us to get a little bit more into a discussion of concave and convex. This is really important, actually.
Okay, well, let me take and delete this room out because we're done with it now. So select, backspace, delete. Now, let's draw out a simple brush And so the idea of merging is taking two brushes that are commonly side by side, or at least have one side touching, and taking those and looking at them as a single brush. And if they would make a valid convex brush, join them so that they really are just one brush.
So let's go ahead and let's do that.
So, for example, I'll duplicate these two brushes. So we have two separate brushes. Select both of them, and then do a CSG merge. Now we have one brush. So we can see how that works, and now it is pretty smart about what it will allow you to merge. If we were to take this back and duplicate it back off so it was like it was, what if it wasn't matching up? So we had the brushes kind of offset. Is that going to work as a merge? No, it's not. Cannot add set of brushes with a concave hull. So now we need to get a really good idea of exactly what constitutes a convex and a concave brush.
For sure.
So let me take a look at just one of these. I'll delete one out. And let's see, backspace, maybe zoom back out. Take this brush, move it in. Now I'm going to edit its edges a little bit so that I can bring this one edge in, like so. Then I'll clone that off, mirror it in X, and line it up. Looks like an interesting shape, and you'd kind of sort of think you could merge it. I mean, it would look like one brush if you had it both selected, but if we try to merge, what happens? Must not be concave. So exactly why isn't this concave? Well, as Buzz said earlier, you can think of concave as some object where the hole dents in on itself at some point. But an actual test we can do to see if the brush is actually going back in on itself would be to draw a line through the shape. Like look at it in a 2D view, like to see if this shape is convex or concave. Try to draw a line through it. If the line intersects the shape at only 2 points, it's convex. If it intersects at more than 3, if you draw a line that would intersect at more than 3 points, or 3 or more, then it's concave.
Right, and we can definitely do that here to show that it's concave. As a matter of fact, if you want to drop your grid size down way low,
drop it way down. Just start to, now with them selected.
There you go.
Start to draw out a brush.
Just pretend this is a line we're drawing here.
So yeah, just to draw a line.
So basically what do we have? This line passed through once, passed through twice, and if that's all it could pass through, then it would indeed be convex. Pass through again, which meant that these 2 points somewhere in here had to be denting in, and then pass through yet again, so we've got 4. So yes, this would make up a concave brush if we were allowed to merge these two together.
Right. So let me delete that test back out and bring the grid back up to its default of 8 by using the 4 key. So we have the two brushes. Now what would happen if we took this one, moved it to the other side? Now if we were to do the line test, there's no real, I mean, no matter where we draw, if we drew a straight line here, we'd catch 2 points, 2 points. Any way you look at it, looks like it would be 2 points.
That's right. So it's going to be convex.
It makes sense that we could grab both of them, then do a merge, and there we go. Bring the grid back, and we have a single brush.
And it worked fine.
So that pretty much takes care of merge.
Okay. And you can also, I guess this is really good to point out as well right now, Logan, and that is you can merge multiple brushes together, not just two like we've been doing here.
Right. For example, if you were to take first cube, second cube, third cube, and as long as the result is going to be convex, it'll work. All 4 merge, and then all is good.
Very nice. Okay, so that leaves us with only one left, and I think we've talked about this just a little bit before.
And that is hollow. What hollow will basically do is take each side of your brush and duplicate it in. Take each, I guess you look at it as just a 3D plane and actually make a 6-sided cube out of it. So taking a cube and hollowing it results in all the 6 brushes that overlap. And that's one thing you have to be careful of, is it doesn't care if faces overlap. It just takes something that was the size of that face and adjusts it so that it would make a full 6-sided cube. And of course, one interesting thing is this will work with different types of shapes. So if we were to turn this into an octagon by hitting Control 8 and then doing a hollow, it'll still work, but now we have a little bit of a mess on our hands with exactly what overlaps what.
Right, plus thickness that it uses for the walls is
dictated by the grid.
That's right.
So if we were to undo that and maybe bring the grid down to about 2 and then do a hollow, we have much finer walls.
Exactly. Okay, very cool. So that's CSG operations. Logan, is there anything else you can think of?
Nope, that covers the CSG operations that are available.
Okay, so again, they're subtract, merge, and hollow. Just keep in mind what a convex and concave brush is, and we're not allowed to have concave brushes. So with that, that's going to wrap up this lesson.